China Rural Studies from the Central China Normal University, and also the Honorary Professor, Institute of Development Studies, Kolkata, and also DAAD Professional Fellow at Heidelberg University, Germany.
And I want to add something, Rukhsana.
Yes, of course.
So, dear participants, it is our honor that Professor Datta is here. He is one of the strongest pillars of public administration and local government, and one of our directors in IPEN Foundation. And he is our inspiration, and we learn a lot from him. So it is our honor that he is here before us for his speech. The floor is all yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Saurabh, for nice words about me. Respected Chair, distinguished participants, I would like to thank the Scientific Committee for having given me the opportunity of making this presentation. Special thanks are due to my colleague in the IPEN, Dr. Saurabh Chandra and Dr. Rukhsana. So long, most of the presentations focused on migration with some reference to gender. My presentation is specifically on gender. I would like to talk about engendering rural governance in India through electoral quota. In my presentation, the focus would be on identifying the barriers, the impediments to participation of women in local government in India. Conceptually, engendering the processes of governance is an exercise in reconstituting institutions and relationships of civil and political society to achieve gender justice and to make governance more inclusive, and thus to pave the road for good governance. This concept has assumed special importance in recent times, particularly in the context of widely prevailing view that inability to engender governance might lead to endangering development. And there is a recent UN declaration that women's participation and leadership in political and public life constitute the key to achieving sustainable development goals by 2030. One of the tested modes of engendering governance is reservation of seats for women in all elected bodies. In Asia, the recent increase in female participation in political system has been possible due to this electoral quota system. Currently, there is about 24.09% representation of women in global parliaments, and 80 countries have introduced gender quotas in elections to national parliaments. In more than 50 countries, major political parties have voluntarily set quota provisions in their own party constitution and documents. With these brief introductory remarks, I would like to concentrate on India. Let me start by saying that the Constitution of India guarantees equal rights for everybody, irrespective of sex, and leaves room for positive discrimination for women. But the fact remains that in the first chamber of the Indian Parliament, the current representation of women is about 11.23%, while in the second chamber it is around 10.06%. After 70 years of our independence, and despite equality provisions in the Constitution and the background of active female participation during the days of our struggle for freedom, in fact, the major landmark in this respect was the amendment of the Constitution in 1992. There were two amendments which sought to engender governance in rural and urban India through electoral quota system. The amendment made it mandatory for all rural and urban local bodies to make reservation of seats for women. 1/3 of the total seats have to be kept reserved for women. This is definitely a paradigmatic shift in the perspective of the Indian state. Because if you look at the plan documents, you would find that in the plan documents, women were regarded as objects of development. For the first time in the history, women were treated not only as objects of development, but also as subjects of development because of these landmark constitutional amendments. And against this global and national backdrop, my presentation seeks to analyze, in the light of secondary source material, the barriers to engendering governance through electoral quota system, and to identify if there is any silver lining, and finally to raise question about the genuine will of the Indian state to promote gender justice. The constitutional amendment has resulted in a remarkably significant presence of women in rural local bodies, which are known as panchayats in India. According to the latest available data, the village bodies have 37.8% women members. The total representation of women in all 3 tiers of village local bodies in India is around 36.87%. It is little more than the quota and even higher than the global average in local government, which is 36%. But the question is, has the journey of women who have been elected to local bodies been very happy? Is the road absolutely clear? If we look at what had happened after the amendment of the Constitution, then we would find that the road is jumpy. There are many crossroads where they have to slow down the speed. They have been experiencing a lot of difficulties in playing their roles, mainly at 3 different levels. 1, individual and family level, 2, social and political level, and 3, legal institutional level. The most important difficulty that women elected leaders are facing at the individual and family level emerges out of the fact that many of them are first-timers and thus without experience, lack of desired education and confidence. Some of them are solely dependent on their husbands, not only for running the family, but also even for attending the meetings, because while attending meetings, they need some confidence support, for which they have to fall back on their husbands. In my study, I have seen that many women leaders could not attend meetings simply because their husbands did not carry them on their bicycle to the meeting place, or they didn't provide them little confidence support. Therefore, the point that I'm arguing, that this is the problem that women, despite being elected on electoral quota to the local bodies, are facing. Added to it is the problem resulting from unaltered responsibilities of women in the family. In our country, women have to play a very important role in the family. Women are expected, as researchers have revealed, that their family load would be reduced once they were elected to local bodies, once they were given the charge of running the institutions of governance. But unfortunately, women members have reported it to a number of researchers that their family load remains unaltered. It has become a great deterrent for women to do their work as elected representatives. Many of them get torn between two loyalties. It has become a great deterrent for some of them who finally surrender to the demands of the family. This is the problem that women is facing. These are the problems that the women are facing at the family and individual level. At the social level, women are genuinely constrained by the existing social norms, traditions, and customs, which are all rooted in patriarchy. As you know, in India, there is a very strong patriarchy. In some of the North Indian states, there has emerged a new class of husbands who could not contest elections to the seats because the seats got reserved for women. Then what did they do? When their wives got elected in the seats through which they had earlier contested and elected, they tried to make their wife proxy representatives. One scholar had studied a number of visiting cards which had shown the names of their husbands rather than the elected representatives of the people. Again, the general social perception about women in India, particularly in the villages, carefully nurtured by patriarchy, is that they are not competent to run the institutions of governance. They are more capable of running the family. They are more capable of managing the kitchen, but they are not capable of running the institutions of governance. At the political level, the grand old tradition continues unabated. What is that tradition? The male politicians who encourage them to contest elections because of the compulsion of quota disappear and re-emerge as ones who would like to control them from behind the scenes. At the legal institutional level, women have to fight against the male non-cooperation expressed in various forms. For example, they are often not allowed to speak in the meetings. Sometimes they are ridiculed in the meetings when they speak, as many of them cannot deliver speeches properly because they are the first timers. Meetings are sometimes held at a time which is not convenient for women to attend. Care is taken to ensure that the important information do not reach out to them in time. Scholars have reported cases when the males arrive at consensus and women have to consent. Allocation of portfolios, important portfolios, is not made in favor of women. This is how the women are discriminated against, despite they are there because of the electoral quota system. One of the strong challenges at the institutional level comes from the male-dominated bureaucracy. Working with a government institution means working with a bureaucracy. The studies have revealed that in some states, bureaucracy refused to interact with them, or if possible, try to harass them. As a result, some of the women who get elected get discouraged to carry out their functions. They sometimes the studies reveal that the bureaucrats used to furnish wrong information to them, render illegal advice, so that they find difficulties later. This has happened in those cases where the women leaders do not have adequate education. There is a view that as India is a union of territories, we have a central government and there are many state governments in our country. Each one of the states has a government. Therefore, there is a view that the state governments which are supposed to implement the constitutional provisions relating to engendering governance have not been adequately supportive. For example, there are parallel bodies. Like in India, caste is a very powerful social arrangement. And in India, there are many states where caste panchayats are there. It was thought that the caste panchayat would not be there once the constitutionally mandated panchayats are in place. But unfortunately, caste panchayats continue to exist despite the constitutionally mandated panchayats being there, which is not legal. Therefore, what has happened in caste panchayats, which are popularly known as khap panchayats in India, women are not allowed entry. Therefore, the caste panchayats wherever they are very strong, stand in the way of engendering governance, stand in the way of empowering women through electoral quota system. And this caste panchayat continue to exist because of historical legacy and because of their political clouds. In the elections, during the times of election, the caste panchayats play a very important role, as they are sometimes what is called vote banks. There are some states in India where legislation has been made for the purpose of ensuring that one who has more than 2 children would not be allowed to contest elections. This is a dangerous legislation because it has been seen, researchers have brought out that it has been immensely harmful for women, because while men are avoiding disqualification clause by resorting to divorce, women get trapped. These legislative measures raise basic questions about the genuineness of the will of the higher level government to promote gender justice in politics, because they directly or indirectly hinder entry and continuation of women elected representatives. Again, very often it is being implemented in an unequal opportunity environment. It is also argued that the basic inspiration for this kind of legislation was derived from the experience of China, which has done away with it. And significantly, 2 Indian states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu have proved that it is possible to bring down the fertility rate quickly if we can enhance the education. Therefore, there is no direct, indispensable linkage between what is called if we adapt the 2 children norm. Therefore, fertility question has to be viewed differently, as the researchers have brought out. Despite what we have said so far, despite the fact that there are many challenges before the women to play their roles effectively, the fact remains that there are some silver linings. The findings of a good number of studies have indicated that despite inherent social constraints like male domination in the society and polity, elected women representatives have started observing and experiencing positive changes in their family and social status. And significantly, case studies have shown that the simple fact of the increase of their numerical strength had changed their motivation, changed their moral and stamina. The studies have brought out keen interest of women representatives to learn how to play their roles effectively. This is definitely a very important silver lining. More importantly, some studies have indicated that a good chunk of the villagers under study feel that the women are more sensitive to the needs of the marginalized sections of the society. Women are more sensitive to the needs of the women. They want to work for the development of women and the marginalized sections of the society. The studies have indicated that women have been able to enhance their acceptance in the society as effective elected officials through their remarkable performance wherever they have got opportunities. Therefore, the point that I'm trying to argue, that women have been able, through their performance, to bring about a positive change in the popular social perception about them, that they're incapable of running the institutions of governance. Some studies indicate that their effective participation is bringing about a change in the development agenda. And many of them do not sit quietly in the meetings. They raise their voice as and when required. It is a sort of what can be called a silent revolution through positive discrimination. Many of the elected women leaders have formed networks for elected women representatives. In this process of working together, women learn from each other and are exposed to the other world. They're exposed to the problems the others face, exposed to the difficulties, exposed to the private life of other people around them. Secondly, it's an empowering process, because the very act of going out of the family, very act of going out of the village to attend meeting, itself in Indian situation an empowering process. Reservation of seats had changed the social composition of leadership. The studies reveal that a good number of the elected women members belong to the families below the poverty line, and majority is from non-political families. Thus, it is breaking not only the monopoly of the rich and the politically powerful, but also the domination of rural governance by some families having established political background. The success of women elected leaders has been virtually acknowledged by the Indian state, which had agreed to provide 50% reservation in all rural local bodies in India. And in India, there are 28 states, out of which 20 states have already enacted legislation providing for 50% representation of women in rural local bodies. This is definitely a silent revolution. To sum up, the foregoing discussion brings out the following. One, women had expanded their representation to undeserved seats. It speaks of their wider social acceptability by means of their performance. Two, women who are entering into the processes of governance, confront, negotiate, and do not always succumb to power structures at different levels and spheres like family, community, and government. Third, women are keen to learn the art of governance and have realized that they have to form network for themselves to fight against patriarchy. And fourth, women have largely been able to prove their competence to run the institutions of governance. To conclude, the electoral quota system for women is not an end in itself. It helps breaking the hard rock of patriarchy. The key problem was indicated by Virginia Woolf in 1929 in our country by Rabindranath Tagore in his novels. Virginia Woolf, in the novel in 1929, the novel called A Room of One's Own, had argued that women have to be given a house of their own. I would like to argue that the constitutional amendment is a gift of the state to women for the construction of a house, which the women need, as Virginia Woolf had hinted at. And the question is, for the construction of the house, the plot is there. What is required is the construction material. The bigger question that comes before us is, will the Indian state come forward to provide the construction material for the construction of a house on the plot that has been given by the Indian state to women in our country? If the Indian state fails to provide them necessary construction material, then the house will not be constructed. And in that case, the very dream of women empowerment through electoral quota system might face a challenge. There are scholars who would like to argue that the entire thing would turn into a sort of tokenism if the state fails to extend its strong hands to the women in their struggle against patriarchy and in their attempt to strengthen the system of governance. Thank you very much for giving me patient hearing.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for your warm words about women in general. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask our dear participants.
I have a question, Oksana.
Yes.
I would like to ask something.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Professor Datta, for the wonderful speech and the enlightenment on the women empowerment in context of the local government. Now, I have a simple, it is a query that came in my mind while listening to your speech was that what is restricting the Indian state from providing the construction material? What is restriction? And second thing is that, do you think that in the patriarchal settings in the northern part of India, where it seems that the women are less empowered than the southern part, so what is the solution? How women can be empowered at the grassroots level, and how the ideal of gender justice can be attained when the Indian state is not willing to provide the construction material for the women empowerment at the grassroots level? So this is my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurav, for asking two very important questions. In response to your question, I would like to argue that women have to make the state work for them. And the only way for the women to make the state work for them in terms of giving them what is called construction material, women's movement have to be strengthened. In our country, women are divided. Women are divided along the lines of caste, along the lines of community, along the lines of party. Time has come when women have to network themselves so that the dividing lines which are there get obliterated and women get united to fight for their rights and to impress upon the state that they have been able to prove their competence. Time has come to give them much bigger hands. And that is the only way of forcing the state to come forward to extend their helping hands to women. State has already come forward by providing for reservation. But the next step has to be, the state has to take the next step. For that purpose, the women leaders, the women's organizations, women's movements have to be reorganized in terms of bringing women of different castes, different religions, different political parties together. This is one. Secondly, therefore, the empowerment process of women, given the patriarchal situation in our country, is not one-shot affair. It will not be happening overnight. Ball has started rolling. Women have been able to break the hard rock of patriarchy by proving that they are as competent as men to run the institutions of governance. The more and more, the increasing social acceptance of women as elected officials will be helping them to move forward. Therefore, women, the way women have started playing their roles, the way women have started moving forward, the way women have started networking themselves, this is a process which has to be carried on further to strengthen the process of empowerment of women and to make sure that the state extends its helping hands to the process of empowerment of women.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurav.
Thank you. And I would like to invite Wilfred, my favorite student. He would like to ask Professor Datta about.
Please.
Yes.
Please.
Yes,
Please.
Prof, please.
Please.
Prof, please. Yes, my question, I want to use an example from Ghana. So in Ghana, since 1998, we've been trying to pass the affirmative action law. And just 3 days ago, our president says that he's going to do everything possible to make sure that it's passed this year. But in the absence of that, women are given some sort of advantage, as in they relax the entry requirements to tertiary institutions. So assuming a man needs, let's say, straight A's to get into a certain program, if you're a lady or a woman, you can be given some sort of advantage, right? Now, there's this school of thought that that is a Robin Peter to paper approach, because the affirmative action is sort of looking at people who have been short-changed, and it is not only women. What about men from less privileged homes? So my question is, do you think that this is a justifiable cost enough, and why? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Affirmative action has a positive benefit that is proved in India. But affirmative action by itself will not take us to achieve the goal. Affirmative action has to be coupled with other actions. For example, women have, in our country, women have been able to prove that they're competent. That is one positive thing, leading to increasing acceptance of women as elected officials. But secondly, the question basically is rooted in patriarchy. And if you look at the representation of women in Indian Parliament, you would find that we have not been able to increase the representation of women in Parliament beyond 12%, indicating that the patriarchy is very strong. Therefore, women have to work together. Affirmative action is an important sort of helping hand for the women to move forward. But women should try to make use of the affirmative action which the state has done for women. But what is happening in most of the, in many places in our country, training of women is not taking place the way it should have taken place. Secondly, the point that you have argued very correctly, that in many training classes where I was present, I have seen women asking that the training should be done in such a manner where the male members also participate. We conduct training separately for female members because it is believed that the female members need separate training. But the female members have argued that there should be an arrangement for training both males and females in the same place. As a result of which, they would be able to tell them, look, this is what we have been told in the training classes. Therefore, the affirmative action is definitely beneficial, but by itself, it will not help us achieving the final goal.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. More questions? Dear participants? Okay, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Sana,
Yes.
Sana, I have an update. Can we please invite Dr. Michelle now for the speech?
We have one question from.
Okay. Okay. After that question, please. It is my request that please invite Dr. Michelle.
Rina Kumari, do you want to ask or not? Rina Kumari, do you want to ask Professor Datta or not? If yes, please ask.
Any question? Yes, please.
Okay.
Rina, please unmute yourself. Rina, please unmute yourself.
Rina, you have a question?
It seems not. Okay. In this case, I would like to invite.
Okay, she has unmuted. Sorry for interruption.
Okay, of course.
Okay, Rina, please ask your question. Professor Datta is here. Yes, please.
Please, Rina.
Yes, sir. My question is, you are saying women should be given helping hand through affirmative action. Women should be given helping hand through affirmative action.
Sorry, I couldn't follow your question, Rina.
Yes, sir. My question is, isn't it better to break the patriarchal values first of all? There is need to break how to break patriarchal values instead of giving affirmative action. Just only.
Okay, sir, I understood her question. Sir, her question is that in such a patriarchal setting, we are talking about the women empowerment. So should we not focus first on releasing the barriers of the patriarchal society? Then we should proceed with the women empowerment, talks on
Yes.
the women empowerment. She's
Yes,
just
yes.
on.
Yes, she's very right that values of the society will not change overnight, because values are transferred from one generation to another through the process of socialization. But the starting process, I mean, as a result of the successful performance of women, society has started realizing that they are competent to handle the institutions of governance. They are competent to run the institutions of governance successfully. And that is how the changing process of values will take place in course of time. You cannot bring about a change in values overnight. That would take a much longer time. Beginning has been made, and women have been able to make the beginning by ensuring that they can perform. Okay, Saurabh.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I think she has got a good answer. Okay, Oksana, please can we invite the next participant, next keynote speaker?
Yes, you can invite Saurabh.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Oksana. So our next keynote speaker is Dr. Michelle Blackley. She is assistant professor at the University of Wyoming. So she will be speaking on the equality